Um, uh, this is an endorsement interview. It's not a debate, though we encourage, responses to things your opponents say in the course of things, polite conversation between each other. Please silence your cell phones if you haven't. That's a reminder for me as well. And let's see. Oh, and if you wouldn't mind, before we forget, could you tell us your age as of a week from Wednesday when this will publish? Senator Wyden, how
I'm
old?
72.
Brent Thompson?
+3 on that.
Okay, you're gonna make me do some math.
That's
And
right. This is an exercise, not just for you or for me, but you.
William Barlow?
I'm 40 years old.
Okay, great. If we have an incumbent, we'll start with him. Senator Wyden, could you tell us why you're running for re-election?
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. It's great to be with people who practice real journalism. I'm running because I'm all in with tackling the big challenges facing Oregonians. Talking about inflation and housing and crime and mental health and climate would be just a few examples. Now, I start with the proposition that I've kept the pledge to Oregonians to have an annual town hall in each of Oregon's 36 counties each year. In 2017, first year of the Trump administration, I had 80 alone. This afternoon, I'll be in Polk County for my town hall meeting number 1014. So I've had a dozen over this work period, and the consistent theme is we've got a lot to deal with after the economic fallout from the public health crisis. A couple of other quick points. I'm running because I've shown that I'll take on the special interests that are profiteering right now, particularly on higher gas and drug prices. This afternoon, I'll lead a national Zoom rally on my billionaire's income tax, which the president has picked up on. Finally, during COVID's first months, I secured expanded unemployment insurance that brought more than $2 billion to our state to help families and small businesses. And I passed a groundbreaking law based on Eugene's model for responding to behavioral health crises in the streets that has brought together law enforcement and mental health providers. The real measure for public service is, do you have fresh ideas and the energy and the skill to put them into law? I have that ability. It would be a great honor to serve Oregon.
Thank you, Senator. Brent Thompson, would you, in addition to saying why you're running, would you give us a brief bio as well? And you have two to 3 minutes.
Well, I think I'll just start in with why I'm running. Why send Brent Thompson to the US Senate? Senator Wyden has been pro-growth, and by favoring high levels of economic opportunity immigration, these policies are ruining the country environmentally and livability-wise. It seems Senator Wyden ignores the reality that the US cannot grow by an average of 25 million people every 10 years and preserve what we might hope to preserve. Since Senator Wyden went to Washington, D.C. as a congressman in 1981, the US grew by more than 100 million people, from 225 million people to 332 million people, and Oregon by 1.6 million, from 2.6 to 4.2 million people, or by 60%. Senator Wyden seems to have no problem with that, but many others do, many of whom are Democrats, and many of whom dwell in the 36% of the voters who refuse to choose a party, or in other words, who are non-affiliated. What Senator Wyden and other groupthink Democrats ignore is that our traditional pro-growth and immigration policies have done nothing but inflict pain on the original inhabitants of the US, the Native Americans. So the question is, how has this incessant fast growth preserved Native American hunting rights, fishing rights, water rights, their way of life, and the right to roam about and have access to the lands that were traditionally theirs? Also ignored over the decades of fast growth is the reality that large immigration numbers perpetuated the sidelining of African Americans. Large numbers of people flowing into the country served to prevent African Americans from achieving full status. Therefore, they lag behind in educational, healthcare, and employment opportunities. And this is the next statement, and everyone is increasingly subjected to traffic jams, teeming airports, unsightly resource wasting sprawl growth, water shortages, increased anonymity and alienation, dilution of representation, as the numbers in various voter districts increase. And with additional heavy consuming Americans, again, about 25 million people every 10 years, there's no denying we exacerbate climate change and environmental losses. Anything in the face or to counter that many people added to the heaviest consuming country in the world is really a Band-Aid application. At that pace, if we keep going 25 million people every 10 years, we will add 425 million people in the 175 years being the 7 generations that Native Americans reportedly tried to plan for. As to environmental losses, one example is the loss of birds. It's estimated that from 1970 to 2019, the US lost 3 billion birds. Also lost were trillions of insects from habitat depletion, chemicals, and from being splattered.
Excuse me, Brent, I feel like you're reading a statement to us and we appreciate.
I am.
Well, we appreciate, I think we know where you are on growth. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
I'm a building renovator, hands-on building renovator. And I've been involved in government in Ashland since 1984 and on the coast since 2000.
Have you run for office before?
Yeah, I was on the Ashland City Council and I ran for US Senate in 1996 as a Reform Party candidate, dealing with balanced budget, dealing with lobbying, and dealing with the North American Free Trade Agreement.
So who gets to say how many people is enough? I mean, isn't that a slippery slope? You are in and everybody else is out?
Well, I think the thing we have to look at is what is the totality of the whole thing. Right now, what we have is we have 40 million people drawing on the Colorado River water. Do we want it to be 50 million? So right now,
probably not. We also have negative population growth in Oregon on a natural basis. In other words, more people died in Oregon last year than were born here. So
you're saying that growth is okay, but I'm saying the opposite, that we can't keep stressing our carrying capacity or the national optimum population, or we can't keep impacting Native Americans and the rest of us with teeming airports and teeming roads and teeming streets. That what I'm advocating is we have a national dialogue where we don't just say, well, we have to build more freeways, we have to build more of this. And if we're serious about global warming, we can't skate on this issue. You've got to deal with it as editors. And Washington, D.C. people like Wyden have to deal with it, but Senator Wyden's not dealing with it.
okay,
That's why I'm running.
Great, thanks. Mr. Barlow.
I'd like to begin by thanking everybody for being here this morning and coordinating this. It's a real pleasure, specifically to get to participate in an event with Senator Wyden. Many dedicated years of service out of him. And this is kind of a lead into answering the question. I appreciate the overall environment in which Senator Wyden has been a part of creating within our country, allowing for this process to happen, allowing for a candidate to run without significant fear of retaliation by incumbents, without restriction on their free speech to voice the ideas in which they share concern about, and have a democratic process in which we can grow as a society together to address the social issues that we have, to try to mitigate controversies we have, and to just all in all be a better group, better community, better society. Who I am, I would say one of my proudest accomplishments is being a father, being a husband, being a community member. I love interaction with people. I love interaction with people that I care about. I love interaction with people who challenge me. So I like the various fronts that I get to serve in, the different roles I play as both community member and family member. Drilling down on that, I would say a very defined description of me is very similar to that of many other Oregonians. And that is in large part, I feel like I'm a product of Senator Wyden. I was not born until after Senator Wyden was first elected to the United States Congress. And I'm in the majority. The majority of Oregonians alive today were not born prior to his first taking a federal office. I believe that that's a concern. That's part of why I'm running today. I believe that these indefinite incumbencies of office threaten our democratic process because I believe that it disengages society. It makes people feel as though they don't have an avenue of participation through the democratic process. And I believe that in large part fuels many of the social problems we have. I think that it fuels the violence. I think that when people feel as though they can't express themselves verbally or through intelligent conversation, they look for other means to express themselves. I believe that it creates issues with
Bill, can you bring this to the specific, please? Tell us about yourself. We understand the issues of long-term incumbency and how that may have a negative effect on the populace. Who are you and why should we support you?
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought that part of it was why I was running. I
think we got that. Tell us about yourself, please.
I feel as though I kind of introduced that with telling about myself in regards.
How do you make your
I
living?
am. So what specific details about myself would you?
How do you make your living, and what qualifies you to run for the U.S. Senate?
Well, I think what qualifies me to run for the U.S. Senate is the same that qualifies every other individual in which meets the minimum requirements. We're active participants within society. We are a comprehensive understanding of the individuals we represent.
Could you, just because our time is short, could you tell us what you do for a living, and then we'll move on to a couple other questions.
I'm a business owner. I'm a father. I participate within my local community and local governments.
What kind of business do you?
I own a visual communication business, specializing mostly in on-premises signage.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's do a quick round where I'm going to ask all of you to quickly give Biden a letter grade on various aspects of his tenure. First up, Senator Wyden, what grade would you give Biden on his handling of Ukraine?
With respect to Ukraine, I think the president is dealing with this very responsibly. The first challenge, Rachel, it seems to me, was to build a coalition of allies behind us. This was something Donald Trump never did. And Joe Biden brought together countries that were barely talking to each other. I mean, to have Switzerland come off the sidelines, for example, is an indication that we're really looking to a very different approach with respect to countries around the world. I think it's going to pay off in terms of national security. I think it's also going to pay off in terms of international trade, hugely important to our state, where something close to 1 out of 3 jobs revolve around international trade, and the trade jobs pay better than do the non-trade jobs. The big challenge, of course, with respect to Ukraine is how we're also going to deal with NATO over the long term. If the Ukraine conflict in effect bleeds into other areas, you run the prospect of triggering Article 5 of NATO. Once you go there, you have the prospect of something mushrooming much bigger. But I think the president is off to a strong start in terms of dealing with Ukraine. This is a very different Vladimir Putin than we saw years ago when he rode on a horse bareback. And clearly he is angry, he is spiteful, he's a very real threat.
So would you give him a letter grade on that?
I'd certainly give him a B+ at least.
All right. Brent Thompson, do you have a letter grade for the president on Ukraine?
No one knows what's going to happen, but I think they're doing as good as they can or as well as they can. So I would give anyone involved a high mark at this point.
Great. William Barlow. How do you, am I saying your name correctly, actually? William?
I'm sorry. Yes, William is correct.
Barlow, is that your last name? How you say
That
it?
is correct.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
I have, for the most part, tried to reserve my opinion on foreign affairs. I believe that we should be operating on a policy level. I don't know that I have all the details of the events that are unfolding in Ukraine. I stay apprised to what is available and or through the news medias, but I don't have any inside information that would allow me to critique him in a meaningful way outside of what anybody else in the general public is doing. But I stand wholeheartedly behind the U.S. efforts and the efforts in which the president is making to ensure democracy stands throughout the world, to protect our allies, to protect our own interests. And as long as he's doing that, I applaud him. I would not assert for a moment that I had greater capacity to be a better judge of what the appropriate path forward is. So that being said, I would say that he's our commander in chief, and we should support him full throttle and give him a top letter grade.
Great. Senator Wyden, what grade would you give President Biden on infrastructure?
I'd give him an A on that. Bipartisan infrastructure legislation. I mean, Rachel, I can tell you right now in the United States Senate, sometimes it's hard to get agreement on people going out and buying a 7-Up. And we really brought people together on a major infrastructure bill. The president's going to be here on Thursday. We'll be talking about it. This is a chance to make our roads stronger and safer and greener. We got a very substantial amount of money for forestry to build resilience, to go in there and clean out those overstocked stands. It's been a huge win in terms of rural broadband. You know, I've been making town hall meetings all across the state. I'll have done 12 by close of business on Thursday. We still have a lot of places where you can't get a connection. And this factors in to another area I felt very strongly about during the pandemic. I wrote the law that got us expanded telemedicine. So these are all pieces of a sensible infrastructure bill. President's going to be here Thursday talking about it, and I'd give him an A for it.
And how would you, I'm going to stay with Senator Wyden for a minute. How would you grade him on his handling or his success or lack thereof in navigating the political dynamics of the Senate, including the fact that sort of Senator Mnuchin's opinion holds sway on whether things are going to move forward at this point?
Obviously, in a 50-50 Senate, you've got a big challenge every single day. I think the way I'd assess it, the recovery plan coming out of the box in 2021 was very strong. I thought that was a chance to really build, for example, on the safety net. We got the child tax credit passed in there. It went through the Senate Finance Committee several times after it expired. I went to the floor and tried to extend it for a year. We had Republican objections, twice. So I think we got off to a very strong start. Obviously, Senator Manchin comes from very difficult political terrain. He asked me to come to West Virginia, and I saw why. I mean, Donald Trump wins the state by more than 40 percentage points. At the same time, Senator Manchin has worked closely with me on my Clean Energy for America bill, where I basically went and took the energy provisions of the tax code and I threw them in the garbage can. And I said, for the future, we'll have a technology neutral system that basically says the more you reduce carbon emissions, the bigger your tax savings. So it's a very challenging political climate back there. And I give Mitch McConnell an F in terms of the way he is handling it, because he basically says no to everything.
Senator, you said at the outset in your remarks that you're cracking down on billionaires, and that and you've been pretty clear about that over the years, the need to make the tax code fairer. Yet you're one of the members of the Senate who is the most friendly to cryptocurrency and the least interested in regulating cryptocurrency. That seems like a bit of a conflict. Can you explain that to us, please?
Well, Nigel, first of all, there are a lot of people who certainly in Oregon are middle class and people who are looking to the future, who are very interested in innovation. Nigel, you and I have talked a bit about this. You follow my career in technology. I've always been interested in the innovators. That was what was behind my internet tax non-discrimination bill. That's what's behind 230. It was behind my work on PIPA and SOPA. It's behind my work in crypto. I've said with respect to crypto, crack down, go after those money launderers, go after these big conglomerates that are trying to rip people off. But my difference of opinion with the Biden administration early on is I didn't want them to crack down on the coders in the way that they were planning to. These coders are just exercising their First Amendment rights. They don't have tax systems in order to collect revenue. I think we've largely prevailed on that. And I give the president credit for the recent executive order that he put out, where to a great extent, he recognizes exactly what I just told you, Nigel, that this is always about the innovators. And that's part of the Oregon history. If you look at my record on technology, watch for that word. It's, by the way, the same reason I've been helping Intel on these innovations that they're making that are so key to our having a domestic semiconductor industry. It's about innovation.
Two quick follow-ups. Do you personally own any cryptocurrency?
No.
No investment account that you have?
None.
Second, we've seen a crypto billionaire named Sam Bankman-Fried invest $6 million already in Oregon's 6th congressional district. It looks like he's going to spend a lot more in support of a candidate who nobody in Oregon has ever met. How do you feel about what's going on in the 6th congressional district?
Well, as a general proposition, Nigel, I don't like all of these outside groups driving campaigns. It really goes back for me to the Gordon Smith race, where both of us said we didn't recognize each other because of all the things being said by people who were from outside Oregon. At the same time, I got my hands full. I'm trying to do clean energy, billionaires, mental health revolution built around shaking up the insurance companies that are refusing to implement the parity law. I decided I wasn't going to get involved in that race. I've got a lot of friends in there, including Loretta Smith, one of my very long-term employees who's been a terrific advocate for folks. So I'm just not going to get involved.
So finally, speaking of, your efforts to rein in the activities of wealthy Americans who work outside the bounds of the law, we've written a number of stories about Robert Pamplin, who owns a number of Oregon industries, and his seeming willingness to use his pensioners' funds as his own in seeming violation of his fiduciary duty as the trustee of their pensions. Can you reflect on that a little bit?
Yeah, I read your articles, Nigel. I think they're important. And now it's up to the Labor Department, which deals with ERISA and carrying out pension law, to determine what comes next. But I think that's an important inquiry.
Okay, thank you.
Senator, would you respond to William Barlow's sort of the question that raises? Should there be any limits on how long senators serve? I mean, California right now there's a particular issue there, but should there be any limits on reelection or on when a senator should leave office?
Well, Rachel, let me respond to this whole issue. Fundamentally, it's about whether you have new, fresh ideas. And we've been talking on this program a bit, and I'm the one laying out fresh ideas, and I'm the one who shows that I have the energy to do something about it. Nobody in our state's political history has done 1,000, and now I'm on 1,014, open to everybody town hall meetings. Mr. Barlow makes a good point with respect to we need ways in which people can express themselves. I'm the person who has basically inaugurated that tradition. Senator Merkley, to his credit, is now up to 500 and counting. And I think the point is, do you have fresh ideas? I mean, nobody ever, Rachel, took the energy provisions, there are 45 of them, and threw them in the friggin' garbage can. That's what I did. And I said, this is a mess. Basically, everybody used to get a tax credit if they were powerful and influential. They had friends on the finance committee. It was a mess, and it was largely a jerry-built system around outdated fossil breaks. I said no more. I said, well, I have one for clean energy, one for clean transportation, one for energy efficiency. Those are fresh, important ideas. Nobody had put in a billionaire income tax before, and I was pleased that the president decided that he was going to build on it. His is called the billionaire minimum income tax. But these are both the kinds of ideas that are part of the Oregon tradition of being innovative, fresh, taking on big interests, and then showing that you have the energy and the ability to actually get them done.
Thank you. So we have one last question, as we traditionally do for candidates, to get to know you in a different way. A fun question. So this year it's what back to normal joy have you experienced this spring or whenever the pandemic let up for you? Senator Wyden, is there something that occurs?
Rachel, I saw it this weekend. You know, I've been to all of Oregon's 56 Fred Meyers. I've been to a number of them on this trip. And what I saw was a lot of people smiling. They were smiling if they didn't have their mask on. For folks who were wearing a mask, and you want to respect everybody's, opinion here, you could see it in their eyes. And I just thought, hey, that's an indication that Oregon is feeling good again. People were talking. We asked a lot of questions of each other, and people didn't talk to me much about the Senate. They wanted to know about basketball and the Fred Meyer visits. A lot of interest in the Coos Bay Fred Meyer, which is sort of unique, and people asked a lot about it when they saw it online.
Brent Thompson.
Well, I think seeing people relax a little bit. I've always enjoyed folk dancing, contra dancing, and ballroom dancing. So those realities of those activities are opened up again. And I think that's a good thing where people can get out and socialize again. And but of course, everybody, now that they're feeling a little freer, are joining our teeming airports and our clogged streets and highways. So there's that issue. And this gets back to 41 years being too long and the pro-growth policies of Californicated Oregon. And Wyden has to own that.
So some post-pandemic joys and not joys. All right, thank you.
Well, it brings us back to the social problems we have with the pandemic ending and everybody wanting to go places and having flights delayed and just the crowding we have in this country as we've added 100 million people since Senator Wyden got in office. And I think that cannot be underemphasized.
All right, thank you. Carlo.
Swimmer. So I've had a great joy of being able to get back in the pool. It's really difficult to enjoy the camaraderie of sports when you have the distancing that we had in the past. So being able to return to a normalcy of sharing lane space, of seeing the community in a casual setting of that sort has been a real joy.
Thank you. I really appreciate you all joining us here this morning. Our endorsements will be out a week from Wednesday. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inaugurating me into a Zoom meeting.
Welcome.
So what do we do now?
Just hit the end button or I will.
Hit
So
An
you'll,
end button?
yeah.
Does that mean leave? Is that a leave
yes.
button?
Oh, leave. Probably I
Okay,
have
well,
that.
it's been a pleasure, everybody, leaping into